The only rear-loading Riese and Muller cargo bike is back for 2022. That's right, I am talking about the Riese and Muller Multicharger. It came onto the scene a few years back as an honestly, I think, more approachable version of the front-loading cargo bikes, the Packster and the Load, to help round out Riese and Muller's excellent cargo bikes. Today we are digging deep on the Riese and Muller Multicharger GT Vario 750 with the 750 watt-hour battery and the Bosch Smart System, so we can answer that age-old electric cargo bike question. What's it like to carry all your junk in your trunk? You guys can call me the Salt and Peppa of electric bikes, because we're about to talk about specs, baby.
Let's talk about specs, baby.
So we are starting off in a different place than we normally do in the Spec Breakdown, and that is going to be in that rear rack that makes the Multicharger an electric cargo bike. The rear rack this year is going to carry up to 143 pounds. That is a ton of weight. 2 small children or one of me.
You know who's got 2 thumbs and needs a ride? This guy.
But assuming you don't want me to do that, probably most of you are going to be taking a partner or kids or, again, just a ton of gear along with you for either touring or commuting. Now, we'll talk a little bit later about some of the customizations you can do with that rear rack, but for now, let's dig into the rest of the specs. As mentioned up top, you have got the Bosch Smart System on this bike. That consists of the Bosch Performance CX motor with 85 Newton meters of torque and 250 watts. You have also got that Bosch 750 watt-hour battery. I would say that's easily going to get you about 40 to 70 miles, maybe a little bit more if you're not carrying gear around with you, and maybe a little bit less if you are fully loaded. It's also going to come with the Kiox 300 display and the more ergonomic controller. We will be doing a deep dive into the Bosch Smart System, so make sure to subscribe if you want to take a look at that. And if it's already been released, I'm going to put it up right here, so press right here if you want to dive a little bit deeper. A great motor is nothing without a great drivetrain, and you do have the Vario hub on this bike. Now that's going to be an NVOLO hub that Riese and Muller has made changes to, so it's specifically designed to be optimized for their bikes. It's going to have a 380% gear ratio and, of course, infinite gears. It's a grip shifter with no specifically set gears, so it gives you a very wide variety and a ton of climbing capability because of that 380% gear ratio. That will pair with the Gates carbon belt drive, which is excellent, honestly, for anybody, but I think especially for touring and commuting purposes. You don't want to be out there messing around with a chain and all that, so that Gates carbon belt drive is going to last you about 6,000 miles before you have to switch them over, and it's not going to break on you. It is pretty much an indestructible system. You've got to have strong brakes on a cargo bike, especially an electric cargo bike. And Riese and Muller has you set up with a 180mm rotor up front on a Magura MT5, and in the back it's a 203mm rotor on a Magura MT4. These are hydraulic disc brakes with 4 pistons that are going to provide plenty of stopping power. A Suntour XCR32 fork with 100mm of travel provides some nice comfort up front, but also some safety. Because you have that longer wheelbase on the Multicharger in comparison to something like the Nevo, but this isn't really an issue because you've got that 100mm fork up front. It's really going to just absorb any sort of shock. Along with Schwalbe Moto X tires, they're going to be 2.4 inches wide, which is plenty wide for both comfort and safety. Both of these specs combined provide riders with a safe and comfortable ride, and it gets even more comfortable with the Thud Buster from Cane Creek. That's going to be a suspension seat post for a full suspension feel. Some other very important but maybe easily forgotten specs are those integrated lights. Man, they are bright and they are effective at what they're supposed to do. You've got a Supernova Mini 2 up front that's going to be very bright, and a Bosch and Muller taillight in the rear provides visibility to those behind you. Another thing to take note of is that hefty double leg kickstand, which is going to ensure that bike is not going anywhere once it's parked. You've also got fenders, the ability to have a front cargo rack as well, and that mixed-D low step frame is going to be the perfect thing for when you have a fully loaded bike. It just makes it a lot easier to get on and off the bike when you are weighed down by gear. Anybody who's been watching this channel since its inception will know that I am a big fan of Riese and Muller, and a lot of that has to do with the, say it with me kids, customization. I love the fact that you can really make these bikes whatever you want them to be. So let's dig into a couple of the customization features that are available on the Multicharger. I think the most popular upgrade that people are going to do on the Multicharger will no doubt be the passenger kit. This is going to add a comfy cushion along with a set of grips for riders who are capable of holding on and you're not afraid they're going to fall out the back. But if you are afraid that they're going to fall out the back, maybe you've got some little ones back there, you've got that safety bar as well. This should allow you to take up to 2 pieces of your most precious cargo along with you without the fear that they're going to fly off the back like that cup of coffee you keep leaving on top of your car. Probably the next most common upgrade is going to be the GX package, which is a really simple upgrade, but basically it takes those Moto X tires and turns them into some off-road tires, which allows you to take this bike on gravel trails, packed dirt, something that's not exactly paved. If you get this GX option, it's going to open up the type of terrain you can ride on. As I mentioned, this particular upgrade is only $59, and speaking of price, you can always check most up-to-date pricing at flyridesusa.com. It's going to be the first link in the description below, specifically for the Multicharger, or go ahead and click on this card right here if you want to customize your own Multicharger or see general pricing. The final piece of customization I'll point out on the Multicharger this year, some of you probably were worried about this when you saw it was 750 watt hours. What you might have been thinking is, can I still get my 1125 watt hours that I've become so used to on the Riese and Muller bikes? And the answer is yes. If you want to do a 500 watt hour power pack and a 625 watt hour power tube, you can do that on the Multicharger for that 1125 watt hour battery capacity. Now I will say, I think the 750 is going to be plenty for most people, but I do know that big battery capacity still reign supreme in terms of electric bikes. So if you want to do that, you can definitely still upgrade that battery to the 1125 watt hour capacity. So let's talk a little bit about the ride experience on the Riese and Muller Multicharger. Now I have always been a fan of the Load. I think that is one of the best cargo bikes on the market. That full suspension, front-loading bike is a really excellent option. So it's always interesting for me to ride one of Riese and Muller's other cargo bikes. And the Multicharger holds up really well. I think at this point, front-loading cargo bikes really haven't made the same headway in the US market as they have in European markets. I don't know if we're just a little bit more suspect about those front-loading bikes, but I do think the Multicharger with that rear-loading capability probably is going to be a more popular cargo option for a lot of people. That's probably because the ride is more similar to a typical electric commuting bike as opposed to with the front-loading cargo bikes where it's kind of a new experience completely and does take some getting used to. I found that the Multicharger rode very similarly to like the Nevo. You're nice and upright and it's kind of a hardtail situation, so it is a little more tactile in the back and you can kind of feel the road a little bit better. Whereas with the full suspension cargo bikes, again, it's just takes some getting used to. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them really. It's just that if you want something that's going to ride more like the bike you already have, the Multicharger is probably the way to go. I do think the mixed frame is probably the preferable option for most people. I know some people have some feelings about low step bikes, especially the dudes out there. I get it, but if you can get over that, it is really nice not to have to tip the bike over when you have it fully loaded. You can just step right through, get on the bike and go. The Vario hub is the hub I would choose on this bike if I were to buy one myself. I love a roll-off and a traditional derailleur is great as well. But again, with these cargo bikes, you don't know if you're gonna have to stop suddenly and then you're in a high gear and you can't really get out of it. With that Vario hub, you save a little bit of money in comparison to the roll-off and you still have the ability to switch gears from a stop. The Bosch CX performs really well on this bike. There's really not another motor I would rather have on a cargo bike. Having that out-the-gate power is so important when you have a full load in the back, and when you don't, it is still nice to have that 85 Newton meters of torque. One difference I did feel like I noticed on this bike is that I think the wheelbase is a little bit smaller in comparison to last year's, or I'm just riding a different size, but I liked having those wheels a little bit further underneath me. There's a tendency sometimes with rear-loading cargo bikes when that back is fully loaded for the front wheel to come up a little bit, but I never felt like that was going to happen on this bike. It feels very sturdy. I never felt like it was squirrely in the handling. You do ride pretty upright on this bike, but I never felt that was a detriment to the handling, which is really impressive. It's difficult to do both things. To have the capability to load almost 150 pounds in the back and also keeping that front wheel on the ground and having the feeling that it's going to stay on the ground and it's not going to come out from underneath you. One thing to keep in mind with the Vario and the roll-off is that if you get a flat, it will be a more difficult difficult process to get that flat changed. So I would recommend probably putting some liners in there, maybe some thorn resistant tubes to make sure that you're avoiding flats as much as possible in that rear wheel. One thing these days I sometimes forget to appreciate is that you can have a massive chainring up front. You used to not be able to do that on the Bosch motors, but especially on heavier bikes, and it gets even heavier when you have that full load, it's really nice to have the extra torque of that 48 tooth chainring. Overall, Riese Muller has done it again in my opinion. I do think where this company shines the most is their touring bikes and then their cargo bikes closely after that. So this Multicharger is another excellent example. Don't forget, you can always customize the bike as much as you want. Riese Muller pretty much makes the bikes on the spot to order. That is still something they do, but do keep in mind current wait times. It could be a while until you get that bike. So I would recommend really thinking about what you actually need and then seeing what's available at flyridesusa.com to see if you can make some minor tweaks to what your expectations were so that you can get the bike a little bit quicker. Don't forget to like this video, you guys, and subscribe to the Flyrides electric bike channel. Go ahead and watch some of our other Riese Muller content. I would recommend the factory tour so you can get to know this company a little bit better before you buy them. They've got some very exciting stuff going on over there. If you found this video helpful for yourself, go ahead and share it to your favorite Riese Muller forum or just general electric bike forum as well. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of electric cargo bikes and if there are other options you're looking at. Thanks so much for watching, you guys, and until next time, enjoy the ride.